Let's talk about a lot of different things. First of all, since you've been away.
Yes, sir. Things have happened?
A lot of things have happened, but some things haven't changed. Interest rates haven't moved since you've been away.
I know.
And now they're starting to move. Is that going to make a difference?
I mean, are they starting to move, or are they just kind of crazy Fed voodoo? Let's talk about a couple of things, and Michelle will chime right in here, I'm sure. Yeah. The big lie, if you will, from the Federal Reserve, in my point of view, and I believe it can be backed up by various points of research, is that they control interest rates. Because everybody's like, oh, they control interest rates. Well, actually, I don't even think they do control interest rates.
Who does?
The market controls interest rates. Demand for long-term securities controls interest rates. Confidence in the strength of the economy. The long end of the curve, 10, 20 years out, they have no impact on it. And the reality is, even if obviously they control the overnight lending rate between banks.
Right.
But beyond that, and so this is like a fun thing to talk about, and I think it may speak to other variables like, oh, well, goodness, is there actually organic strength in the economy that would validate this? And that's a real interesting thing to talk about.
So is there organic strength in the economy? Because
that's not a point of view. I can't say that that's an opinion. There is organic strength in the economy. That's not an opinion. The question is the organic strength in the economy narrow and deep, or is it broad and deep, and will it continue to get broader and deeper? But there is strength in the economy.
But still express concern about it.
Of course. Well, there's lots of reason for concern, right? If you look at the technology sector, it's on fire. And I'm not just talking about Apple. I'm talking about anything tech-related. You look at biotech and healthcare.
Crazy.
It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. But you look at, again, some of the industrial manufacturing sector. You look at, obviously what's going on. Energy's got all sorts of variables that are at play. So we're in a world where the idea of a... Go ahead. Actually, I'm gonna listen to you, Mike.
It's a money party.
Take a break.
Let's just take it easy.
What would you expect would happen if the Fed does raise interest rates, say, in June? What would happen to the economy?
Hard to know. I mean, we saw incredible volatility in the markets just on the suggestion yesterday, right, that they were going to actually do something. So there's two sides to this. There are people who say it is absolutely a bad idea because, remember, the Fed has two things that they're supposed to watch. What's the unemployment rate, which is actually doing quite well? Yeah. What is the inflation rate? In theory, we always think about them making sure inflation doesn't get too high. But right now, people are worried that inflation is too low. And when inflation is too low, if you have things like deflation, that means, why would I buy a car today? Because it will be cheaper next month.
The other interesting thing is the bond market is not, like this, while the financials have moved, Citigroup, the actual bond market has done nothing.
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about...
that, to me, tells me more than anything that any Fed would do.
Dylan, I need you here for like 18 hours for a 3-hour show, because I've got to move on to another topic. I have a lot of questions I wanted to ask about economics. But let's talk about something we haven't talked about enough on this show that's just impacted people on the West Coast so badly, and that is the drought in California. It is
they say they got 1 year.
Epic. It's epic.
And it's almost one of those things that's so biblical. Big that why talk about it? Why would you talk about it? We don't know what we're going to do about it. The more you look at the map, like there's no apparent solution to it. So people don't want to have the conversation. I mean, the thing, and you guys know, I've been very much involved with sort of innovation in agriculture and hydroponics, but not just hydroponics, but there's all sorts of irrigation techniques and all this sort of stuff. And I was just at the Global Forum for Innovation in Agriculture in Abu Dhabi last week.
By the way, so people know what you're talking about. You're actually working with people
with combat vets specifically.
Combat vets, but also you're talking about ways, and other people are talking about ways of cutting water consumption by 90% agriculturally, which would be a revolution.
Well, I mean, think about it like anything else, where the actual amount of water that gets used to grow anything compared to the amount of water that's introduced into a field or introduced into a plant, that only 10 or 15% of that water ever makes it to the roots, ever makes it into the plant and is utilized. And so what you're seeing from all sorts of manufacturers around the world is enhanced techniques to either line the soil. They literally will dig out the soil and line it with plastic so that when you water it, you basically move the water, the bottom of the soil up to 3 feet below. It's their sprinkler system, and you can go on and on. But there is and will be a massive boom
a huge difference
in water management technology globally.
Right.
Globally.
The technology is so important. Would you agree? Pricing has been a real problem. People should pay more for water. People should pay more for water, right? When there's more profitability in a product, what do you get? You get more of it, right? And we wouldn't have water shortages nearly as much if we didn't have so much
Well, one, it's the lack of leadership, I would say.
Yeah,
First and
sure.
foremost, set aside technology, set aside market dynamics. There has been a global absence of leadership to address this issue, because who wants to be the president or the prime minister or the minister
to raise water prices
and comes up and says, listen,
right.
we got a water problem. Like, that's not. I don't think we're going to hear Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush or anybody else come out and lay out the water crisis for us. But leadership, number one. Technology, number two. Implementation, number three. And the key to implementation and technology will be market valuation for the technology implementation. But it will happen because you have no choice, and we're not going to not have water.
And because the Money Party said it's going to happen. Michelle, thank you for being with us. It's always great to see you.
Too.
Money Party, stick around. And coming up next, Empire Grows. The Empire, man. What viewers are saying about the hit Fox drama about a family that stops at nothing to reign over the music biz. Well, now they are reigning over television, breaking records left and right. It's
Higher ratings
incredible.
every episode.
Every episode.
Season.
Over 17 million watched this last night. We'll tell you why when we return.
Terrence Howard.